Hello, I wanted to discuss something that I was quite interested in that just popped into my head about The Walking Dead, which is which Walking Dead characters who are the equivalent to the Last of Us characters. Now, in the DLC called Left Behind, there's a character called Riley, former best friend of Ellie. Who I picked to play that role would be Lizzie. Lizzie, who was introduced in The Walking Dead in season 4 as one of the congregation who were let into the prison by Rick and his crew, who eventually went crazy, killed by Carol in season 5. So I think she obviously Riley was black in The Last of Us, but in terms of the female characters, the young female characters, she would have been a good equivalent to play Riley. Next on my list is Sarah, Joel's daughter, who dies in the introduction of the game. Who I picked to play that was Sophia, Carol's daughter, who gets killed in season 2. With that, legendary reveal, her ending up in the barn. The whole plot of that season was finding Sophia, and they ended up discovering that she was in the barn the whole time. But yeah, no, she was kind of like a damsel in distress kind of character, someone who was very weak and wouldn't have lasted in that world. And I think Sarah is the equivalent to her. So Sophia as Sarah in The Last of Us would be a good fit. Now, next up we have Tess. Who would play Tess? Now for me, it was a toss-up between Maggie and Andrea. In the end, I went for Andrea. I think reason being is because I think Andrea would play. I think she kind of edges it in terms of a female badass. I just think she's got the better look for it. I think she would embody that role a bit better than Maggie would. Yeah, Andrea to play Tess, who dies once they reach the building in which they were meant to meet the Fireflies. Next we have Tommy, Joel's brother. Tommy, for me, I picked Jesus. Jesus is a character who is good-natured, who's tough, obviously, but who's got he's got one of those good guy faces in The Walking Dead, and I think he'd play Tommy perfectly. I think he'd be a good fit as Joel's little brother in the game, who gets split for I don't know how many years. They at some point get split, and Tommy sets up this whole new life for himself, and they eventually reunite in Wyoming, I believe it is, further down the game. So yeah, Tommy would be played by Jesus in my film. Now, Henry and Sam, who come as a package. Henry and Sam are brothers who encounter Joel and Ellie in Pittsburgh, which was for me one of the best periods of the game, when Sam and Henry were introduced. Almost self-explanatory. I'll pick Morgan and Dwayne. I think in the film I would switch it to be them being father and son as opposed to siblings. Lenny James is a tremendous actor and one of the best characters in The Walking Dead, and for me it was a no-brainer to pick him, to cast him as Henry. And Dwayne would play Sam. Yeah, someone who wants to. He's quite similar to Sam in he wants to be tough, but in the end, we didn't get to see much of him. Obviously, we only saw him in season 1, but who in the end is weak. Next up, we have the last two remaining allies. We have Maria. To start off with, Maria, who is Tommy's wife. So I'd pick Maggie. Yeah, Maggie would play that role better. For me, I think she'd be a good fit for Maria, just because of her role in season 8 in The Walking Dead. Would mean that she would play Maggie. She'd embody Maria a lot better than anyone would. Yeah, Maggie's become a very, very big and influential character in The Walking Dead, and I think that that kind of tough woman, or role, should I say, is exactly the same as Maria's role in The Last of Us. So Maggie as Maria. Next up, the last ally we have is Bill. Bill, who's one of my favorite characters, who we encounter in I'm not sure what part of America it is. It's probably still the East Coast. Boston. Yeah, Boston is the East Coast, kind of. So it can't be that far, because when Joel and Ellie walk to Bill's home, you know, they couldn't have been walking that far. They couldn't have gotten that far, but they must have gotten pretty far. So I'm thinking it's still close to Boston. For me, Dale would play Bill. I was trying to think who would play Bill. Herschel was too old and too nice, but I think Dale would play that grumpy old man character very well. Yeah, I think Dale would nail that role. So Dale as Bill as the final ally. The first antagonist I have on my list is Robert. Who would play Robert? For me, again, there was a few toss-ups, but then I picked Dwight in the end. Dwight has got that he's got that weasel face about him, that very slippery kind of snaky kind of character. So Dwight would play Robert for me, who's one of the very early encounters that we get in the game. Who gets killed by Tess, to be exact. Next up is Marlene. And I've picked Michonne to play Marlene. In my head, I'd try and pick, you know, the black actors and actresses from The Walking Dead to play the black actresses and actors in The Last of Us. Michonne is the only black actress in The Walking Dead, so she'd play Marlene. I think, obviously, Michonne is very fierce. They're two different characters, but I think having seen, you know, Michonne's vulnerable sides a lot, you know, in seasons gone by, I think she can tone it down to play Marlene seamlessly. So I think Michonne would be a good fit for Marlene. David, for me, it was, I was like, okay, would Negan play David? Would this person play David? And then I was like, you know, nah, the governor. No person but the governor would play David for me. Can come across as really charming, very persuasive, but very shady as well, just like David. The governor for me would play David. No problem whatsoever. David in The Last of Us is a character who Ellie encounters whilst on a hunt in the mountains. And then we discover that he's a cannibal. So we have the groups next, the antagonist groups. So first we have the Fireflies. Now I think a combination of Oceanside and the Kingdom would play the Fireflies, or maybe just Oceanside. They're an all-women group. I wouldn't mind changing that kind of dynamic of the Fireflies, them being an all-woman group with Michonne the head would be pretty cool. Yeah, but no, Oceanside and a bit of the Kingdom could play that role. Yeah, Oceanside / the Kingdom for the Fireflies. The Hunters are a group of people who we encounter in Pittsburgh, I think it was a no-brainer to pick a combination of the Wolves and the Saviors. The Wolves were very I think they embodied the Hunters a bit better. You know what I mean? They hunt people for their stuff. So I think, no, we'll leave the Saviors out. I think we'll pick the Wolves for this. They're exactly the same as the Hunters. Yeah, the Saviors are more they are reasonable to an extent, but the Wolves weren't reasonable at all. They take your shit, and that's it, and they kill you, boom. So yeah, the Wolves as the Hunters. The final group, David's group, the Cannibals, I picked the Terminus lot to play that role, because Terminus were a bunch of cannibals themselves. When we discovered that David and his group are cannibals, for me it was no-brainer that Terminus would be that group. Now the final two, who would play Joel and Ellie, the two main characters of the game. So first of all, I'm gonna go with Ellie. Now Ellie, I've been thinking about this for a while, and there was no really other character who I think would suit the role better than Enid in The Walking Dead. Mainly because she is the closest one who looks like Ellie and who can handle herself, who's very tough, who lost people. Everyone's lost people. But then when I think about how her chemistry would work with Lizzie as Riley, I don't know, maybe if I could find another actress to play Riley, I would. But I think Enid as Ellie would play her perfectly. Ellie, who is someone who has had to grow up very fast, who's had to be tough from day one. There's no other character I can think of in The Walking Dead who would play Ellie. So Enid would, for me, be the best fit for this role. And now the big one, Joel. Who will play Joel, the big man? Now, obviously, normally I would have picked Hugh Jackman to play Joel because of his appearance in Logan. It was a toss-up between Negan and Rick. In the end, what made the decision was that Negan's character is, you know, obviously he's got a vulnerable side, but because of the way he is in The Walking Dead, and I don't think it would have been quite a good fit. Although Joel is not a good person, he's technically not a good person. No one is really. I picked Rick to play Joel. Reason being because just like Joel, he's lost his child. We've grown to know Rick as a very good person, as a fair man, as a good father, and all that. He's grown to be very ruthless in The Walking Dead, and I think that mirrors Joel perfectly. And I think Andrew Lincoln as an actor, he's again another tremendous talent. There's a lot of talent on that show, and yeah, I think Rick as Joel would be perfect. Yeah, so that's the list right there. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching the video, and I will see you next time.